Daniels, and welcome to my guitar lesson, Basic Open Chords for Beginners and Intermediate Students. So make sure that you're tuned up.
And let's get started.
So now that you're tuned up to A440, let's talk about the caged system, C-A-G-E-D, because that's the system that this lesson series is based on. So basically, the caged system has each letter of the word caged representing a chord. So first would be C. So I want you to have your guitars ready. We're going to play open C major, okay? As a rule, I suggest, unless you're intermediate and totally confident about your chords, to pick each note of the chord before you strum it, like this. So there's our C major, all right? You don't have to play with a pick, you can finger pick these, but definitely give each note a play before strumming, because we want to avoid having chords with dead notes or missing notes, and that happens. All right, let's go to the next one. That will be A major. These are all going to be major chords. Next is G major. Next is E major. And finally, we got D major. Don't strum the low E. All right, now many people don't know that caged also applies to minor chords, and seventh chords, and ninth chords. Basically, it's a system that can be used for any chord on the guitar as a way to categorize it and to kind of figure out the fretboard. That's really what caged does, is it demystifies the guitar fretboard. So it's not just for major chords, as we're about to see.
So get ready for the hardest chord in this series.
Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you open C minor.
Now, this chord, I used to think it wasn't worth the effort, but as I've gotten more used to it, I thought, hey, it is kind of cool to have an open C minor. So here it is. As you can see, I still struggle with it. So the hardest thing is tucking your second finger behind your first and placing it on the first fret B string. I can't lie, it's difficult, but here it is. And just as an incentive, I'll show you a cool move that you can do with this open C minor chord. In case you're not convinced, it's worth learning. Now just take off your third finger. That's kind of cool. And then you could go on to a chord like this, maybe, to like a G, sus, into a G7. But anyway, it's a cool chord. So now, we have a number of chords more to go. They're going to be all minor. Let's do open A minor. Let's do open G minor. This is another chord I never saw in a book. Thankfully, a lot easier than open C minor. All it requires is a bar on the third fret, and it requires an acrobatic second finger that shoots over that open D string. And yes, you must keep clear of that open D. I would check the open D before even trying the chord, and now let's do the chord note by note. And because the A string is muted, you can happily strum with a pick, or you could finger pick it. And now let's move on to E minor. Okay, after that we have open D minor, don't play the low E. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the 10 chords that we're going to use as the foundation for the rest of this series. So in this video, we're going to cover the E and F groups of chords. This lesson presents the caged chords in the order of an E Phrygian mode, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Caged can be presented alphabetically from A to G. However, I chose E because it is the lowest string of the guitar. So let's start with E. We're going to revisit our E major chord. Here it is. I call this a 2-3-1 standard E major. The notes are E, B, E, G sharp, B, and E. I highly recommend, as a matter of fact, I require, if you allow me to say that you learn the notes in the chords. It will serve you so well as a musician and as a guitar player, because it's going to become habitual. So you should know not just the shapes. You know, guitar players are shape-minded people.
This is insanity. Wait, what are those notes?
We think in terms of shapes, and that's because of how we learn this instrument. But let's put notes behind every shape we learn, okay? So if you're with me on that, it will pay off richly. So there's E major, all right? An advantage of this shape of E major is your pinky's free. So it's free to play, so you can do stuff like... All right, let's look at the next fingering for E major. I call this a 3-4-2 shape, all right? And your first finger's free. Your first finger really can't do much. I mean, you could play the C note on the B string first fret and get this type of thing. But really, I'll show you the advantage to this shape for those of you that might be wondering, why should you learn an alternate shape of E major when you have the first one down, right? Well, I'll show you why. What if you had a chord progression like this? All right, so if you look at any major bar chord with the root note on the low E, with a shape like this, you will notice what I call the 3-4-2. Okay? In other words, outside of the bar, that's what your hand is doing. Your third finger's on the A string, your pinky's on the D, and your second finger is tucked away on the G. So it wouldn't make any sense in a progression like that for you to switch to the first fingering of E major that I showed you. It would make total sense to just keep the 3-4-2 as you go down to E. Guitar fingerings are often about what has happened and what's going to happen, not just the moment. Now let's look at E minor. We have our friendly 1-2 shape here. The notes are E, B, E, G, B, and E. Okay? Exactly 2 octaves. Just for your knowledge, any bar chord like this or is a 2-octave shape, okay? 2-octave meaning you have a range of 2 octaves. That's a pretty wide chord, okay? So let's go back to our E minor. So with this guy, you notice your third and your pinky are free. So I want you to keep in mind when you're doing shapes on the chord shapes on the guitar, observe which fingers are free, because those are the guys that you can do the fun stuff with. So we have our E minor chord, but we can easily go up here to the 3rd fret on the B and the high E string and do something like this if we want. We might even be able to pull off something like this. Do that again. Okay? We couldn't do that with this next shape that I'm showing you, and that's why the alternate shapes are important. They each have an advantage. All right, so this is a 2-3 E minor fingering, same notes. All right, so now I think I missed a shape here. Let's go back to, so with the 1-2 E minor shape, let's add our 3rd finger, giving us a G in the bass. Now let's compare those 2 chords. You hear the difference? This is called voice leading. So in the bass we have bow. That's a G as opposed to bow, right? The E. So it makes it different. It's a different coloring. Just like painters are very interested in shades of a color. Well, we have shades of colors on the instrument, right? If every E minor chord were the same, it would be really depressing. So that is an inverted E minor chord. It's E minor over G. I like saying E minor over 3 because that's literally what it is. It's the third, which is G, is in the bass. So this is really a first inversion E minor chord. It's just low. It's very low. It's the lowest possible. So what could we do with this if you're not convinced that it's of use? Well, for example, if you have a chord progression, you want to go from E minor to G, but you don't want to be so obvious like this. Right? I mean, nothing's wrong with that, but let's just say, hey, it's obvious. You want a more subtle way to do it. Well, we could do the inversion of E minor, which has G in the bass already. And when we go to G, all we have to do is lift up our first finger. Sorry, our second finger, and there's G. So what you have, we could put the pinky down. So you have this. Okay, that's a much more subtle way of expressing E minor to G because the G is staying constant throughout. All right, let's go to this shape here. We're going to add a pinky onto the 2-3 E minor fingering, and we're going to get this.
Okay, now we're going to go to F chords.
Disclaimer, the F chords focused on in this presentation are bar chords rather than open chords, but are often used in conjunction with open chords. Because of its prominence in guitar playing, F has been exceptionally included here.
So the first one, the smallest F, by the way, could be easily expressed by a bar at the first fret, E and B string, and adding your second finger to the second fret, G. That's the smallest F, probably the easiest F you'll find. But it's a little too small for us, so we're going to add an F on the D string, making it a 4-note F chord. F, A, C, F. Okay? And the cool thing you can do with this, it's in open position. Keep the bar, but take your second finger off. Make sure the bar does not cover the G string because we're going to use it. And you can do cool stuff like... And there's tons of variations on that. Now let's go to what I call the medium F chord. All we're doing is throwing a C on the bass. So we have our same shape, but the note spelling is different. This time it's C, F, A, C, F. And it has different weight to it. One of the things we're going to get from this chord study is an increased sensitivity to notes. You're going to be able to hear when there's
A note on the bass
that's different, or
A high note that's different.
those are the easiest. The hardest are the middle notes, but you will also be able to tell when a middle note has changed. So here I'm taking this F chord and we're running the lowest note down to C. So here's what we have. So this is F over 5. Some people call it F over C. Again, I kind of have my own naming when it comes to inverted chords. I call this a F over 5, which is literally what it is. Okay, and you might ask, well, what use would I have? Well, let me tell you, it's a little bit more weight than this F chord. You have that note on the A string, giving it more weight. And what you could do cool stuff like this. I did a voice leading. I basically had that in the bass. Okay, and I could do that because I was playing F over the C bass. I couldn't do that. It wouldn't sound the same if I just used this small F chord here. Okay, let's move on to the big F chord. The 2-octave F chord.
Also called F grande.
F, C, F, A, C, F. That chord really needs no introduction. I think it's an accomplishment in itself.
One of the hardest chords for beginners to master.
So if you have that chord, I congratulate you.
There's a lot you can do with it. We're not going to go into that here, but
Thumbs up to you for acquiring the F chord
and having that in your bag.
Okay, that does it for this lesson. Next lesson will be the G and A groups of basic open chords. Take care.